It's tremendously big and tremendously wet.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 73 of the Ron and Brian podcast. I am Ron, as always, joined by the only man Tekashi69 didn't mention as a member of the Trey 9 Bloods, Brian. Brian, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. I mean, there's just so much to get to. I don't even feel I feel rushed. I feel panicked. Most importantly is the fact that my existence as a Latin king it remains on the down low. So I feel good. I feel real good.
All right, well, we do have an action-packed episode today, so let's get right to it.
Drink of the week.
Na zdrowie.
Salud.
Drink of the week.
Sláinte.
Prost.
Drink of the week.
So I don't want to say that we've gotten, let's say, lazy with putting up polls for Drink of the Week or coming up with themes, but there was just so much to research. Brian, I know you were on the ground in Washington, D.C. for most of this week, so it was a busy week. So we're doing another dealer's choice this week for Drink of the Week. What are you imbibing with tonight?
This was something you probably could have predicted. How do you want to go that route? I opened up my favorite bottle of scotch, the Macallan 12. I poured myself what I consider to be a pretty hefty home pour. One solid ice cube in the center. That is going to hold me over for the next hour. Yourself?
All right. Myself, I mean, we are in fall now. The fall season has officially begun. And like the basic bitch that I am, it's pumpkin beer season. So I'm going with one of my favorites from Southern Tier Brewing. One of the originals, King, their Imperial Pumpkin Ale. Let me just get a little...
Now, I'm going to ask, and this could be a stupid question, but is this a beer that you got from Tavour?
This is not a Tavour beer. I got this actually from Whole Foods, surprisingly
Really?
enough. This is one of the first pumpkin beers I've ever drank.
All right, and you're okay with the pumpkin beer?
This I don't drink a ton of them, but this is one of the ones I enjoy. In fact, they've done a can on Nitro Pumpkin this year, which I'm really trying to hunt down because I would like to try that. So I don't do a lot of pumpkin beers, but this is one of the ones I drink.
Because what's concerning me is that you're drinking a pumpkin beer, and just a couple episodes ago, you drank a White Claw, which leads me to think that you are sliding into basic bitch territory. And frankly, I'm a little concerned.
Listen, there's no one more basic than me. And I don't know if you saw the post I put on our Facebook page earlier, but there is a hard seltzer advent calendar that you can get, 12 cans of a variety of different hard seltzers for just $59 to drink during the holidays.
I'm not on the hard seltzer kick. I tried it. I was truly disappointed. I truly would not go back to it, and I truly wouldn't try it again.
Well, when the Four Loko hard seltzer comes out, we are going to need to suck it up and try that.
Absolutely, and it will not be the first time I've sucked it up. I mean, there were a lot of times when I was in college that, the ladies weren't showing any interest, and at 3 a.m. when you're at a bar up in Schenectady, you got to go home to something. Those were some cold nights, and a warm body helped to get through it, even if it did have a mustache.
You know what was big this week, Brian?
Your penis.
Well, besides that, and actually I'm average in length, but above average in girth, I've been told.
Really?
But racism was all over the place this week.
This
Week.
in
Racism.
As you know, we've got a two-time defending champion, Jean Kramer. She was on the bench last week because we couldn't find her a suitable contender, but she is back looking for win number 3. I know it's been a while since our listeners have had to vote, so we're just going to do a quick Jean Kramer refresher.
My suggestion, recommendation,
keep Marysville a white community as much as possible. White, seriously. In other words, no foreign-born, no foreign people because of what, how can I say, in our past, what we have experienced, it's better to have it simply American-born, put it that way.
So, and that really doesn't do her justice. I think if you go back 3 or 4 episodes, we play her 6-minute interview with the local news. So anyway, that was a refresher on Jean Kramer, our current champion in This Week in Racism. Some of the stories we looked at going to Fort Worth, Texas. Georgia Clark is now a former high school English teacher after having been placed on administrative leave earlier this year when tweets she sent to Donald Trump asking him to get rid of, quote, illegal students went viral. After the investigation, she was relieved of her duties this week. Some additional information that came out on the same day she posted these tweets. It was found that she told a student to, quote, show me your papers that are saying you're legal. She had previously been disciplined in 2013 for calling a group of students Little Mexico and another student white bread. So just a fabulous individual, and thankfully she's out of the teaching profession now. Looking at the category of bad cops, you've got Boston police officer Joseph Lynch, who has been placed on administrative leave after he allegedly called a group of black students monkeys and used the N-word towards them.
Oh boy.
You also have Indiana police officer Robert Lawson, who has been charged with battery, perjury, and a number of other charges after a 2-week investigation found that he had struck a 17-year-old African-American student and then lied about nearly every aspect of the confrontation. Going out to Birmingham, Alabama, 2 Muslim men are asking the Department of Transportation to investigate American Airlines and regional carrier Mesa Airlines after their flight was canceled because flight attendants didn't feel comfortable with them on the plane. According to Issam Abdullah, the attendants became suspicious of him after he went to the bathroom and flushed twice. American Airlines is currently investigating the incident. Listen, if a guy is on a plane, and I will say this, doing number 2 on a plane is about as close to a terroristic act as you can get. But if he at least did a courtesy flush, I think you might have to let him slide. Brian, your thoughts?
I'm going to say this. The pressure of an airplane toilet is so strong, unnecessarily powerful, that anybody who's flushing twice, they are not evacuating their bowels. There's something else going on there.
All right, so you're on the side of the airline is what you're saying.
I'm not saying that there's that the flight attendants behaved appropriately. I'm just saying that there was cause for some concern and some additional information and follow-up should have been had.
All right, so let's go up to upstate New York. In Gouverneur, New York, about 100 miles north of Syracuse, 2 white girls ages 10 and 11 are facing charges in an assault on a 10-year-old African-American girl while riding the school bus. A 28-year-old white bus monitor is facing child endangerment charges for doing nothing during the assault, which allegedly lasted 20 minutes. The attack has drawn the attention of New York Governor Cuomo, who has asked the New York State Division of Human Rights to investigate. Brian, should a bus monitor be charged for not intervening in a student fight?
I think this speaks once again to the responsibility of bystanders. I mean, it goes back to the final episode of Seinfeld, where you had the 4 main characters doing absolutely nothing while a man was assaulted, and they were brought on charges. If you are witnessing a crime, what is your responsibility? A bus driver, I understand to a certain degree that they are entrusted with the care of the children that are on that bus. And
this was actually the bus monitor, so you could argue it's specifically that person's job to keep an eye on the students.
Well, they were doing their job. They were keeping an eye on the students. Does it state that they're a bus fight interrupter? No, they are a bus monitor. They were simply monitoring the children. So, when they were putting their report together at the end of the day, it was, yes, there was a fight and some children were assaulted.
All right. Going out to Los Angeles, California, we have found a contender that we feel can go up against Gene Kramer. Adrian Ashford was at a CVS in the Eagle Rock neighborhood of L.A. when she was verbally assaulted by a woman later identified as Heather Patton. Ashford started to videotape Patton as she unleashed her racist rant, which we have audio of here.
I hate niggers!
Yeah, she's on drugs or something.
No, I just hate niggers! Fuck you, niggers! I hate niggers!
It's okay, we're calling the cops on you
I would
because you're disturbing
I
everyone
would
in
kill
there.
a nigger, but the law says I can't kill the niggers! If the law didn't say that I couldn't kill the niggers, they'd all be dead! Here's my license plate number! Nigger! 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 Nigger!
Wow,
Excuse me.
that is rough.
So
Those those are hard R's.
Oh yeah. She is enunciating every syllable there. So Patton works in the TV and movie industry in costuming and other crew roles. Has no criminal record, but shockingly, her neighbors have taken out 2 restraining orders against her. One of her neighbors commented that she, quote, has a long history of erratic, unstable behavior and making violent threats to the neighbor and his family. The LAPD reportedly has opened a hate crime investigation. So head on over to the Facebook page or our Twitter page and vote for This Week in Racism. We've got Heather Patton going up against 2-time champ Gene Kramer. Brian, as always, I'm throwing it over to you for a prediction.
Listen, I'm going to go with this. I think I'm impressed with Heather Patton. I genuinely am impressed with it. We've spoken about it throughout the week. We've been checking in with each other to see if there's a chance that there is going to be a racist who is going to be, of a caliber of a Gene Kramer. There was absolutely nothing going on the previous week. We pushed back the recording of this podcast so that we could, see if we could squeeze in a candidate late minute. Who knew that such high caliber racism was going to suddenly rear its ugly head, this late in the week? Heather Patton, anger, the hard R's, you're in a CVS. We've all felt rage when we've been, waiting for the receipt to finish printing. Never have I ever thought of going racism. Never thought of dropping N-bombs. Heather Patton, I tip my cap to you. This week, you are my predicted winner.
All right. Well, once again, head over to Facebook and or Twitter and cast your vote in This Week in Racism.
Ron and Brian's Beef of the Week.
Brian, what's bugging you today?
I hate to do this one. I really, it's something that we have spoken about for years. That even, when we were doing our podcast in the form of just a phone conversation between the two of us, my beef this week is with Apple.
How so?
Well, I think we both know that, I hold on to my phones as long as they are operational. I don't upgrade to the new phone. I don't go run out and buy a new phone simply because it's on sale. Not sure whether you realized it, Ron, but this past week, Apple came out with their new operating system for the iPhone. This is 13, and then they came out with the update 13.1 quite quickly afterwards. And I decided, hey, I'm going to upgrade my to the new iOS. Downloaded it, installed it, and my phone, which a week ago was working perfectly fine, had no complaints about it, is now glitchy as fuck. I click on the podcast button so I could hear our podcast, and the screen freezes, and then it plays a different podcast. I go to send an email, and it just locks. I hit the home button to exit out of an app, and nothing happens. And we know Apple was sued about this for a while. After an upgrade, they slow down and they glitch the old phones. I feel I have become victim to it. and maybe requiring to go out and purchase a new phone very shortly. Ron, what's bothering you?
So my beef this week is with Zach Galifianakis, Will Ferrell, and let's just go all the folks at Funny or Die.
Are you referring to My Two Ferns?
Between Two Ferns.
Whatever it is.
So a clever bit when they did it on the Funny or Die website. I always enjoyed it because it was small doses.
Yes.
And they attempted to stretch it into a 1 hour and 22-minute movie on Netflix. And the previews gave it a little bit of promise. It had potential, quite the star-studded lineup. It was one of the most painful, unfunny things that I've sat through. And I got through an hour, and then I was just like, you know what? There's just no reason for me to try and finish this. The only parts that were humorous in any way, shape, or form were the actual Between Two Ferns segments that were in the movie. Everything in the middle, for the most part, was crap. So thank you for just fucking that up for everybody.
May I agree and add a little bit onto what your complaint is?
Please do.
This reminded me, and I watched it this past weekend, this reminded me of Borat.
Yes.
Where you had a show that Sacha Baron Cohen put on. He had 3 different characters. He had his Ali G character. He had Borat. And then he had, I want to say Eddie Munster, but it wasn't. Who was the third character that he did?
I forget. Wasn't
Bruno?
Was
yes,
it?
it was Bruno.
Okay,
so
Bruno,
the idea was he's got these 3 characters, and what was brilliant about that show was there was no context to any of these characters. They would just show up and doing an interview, and you would kind of have to catch up, and it was very funny. And then he decided, I'm going to make a whole movie about Borat going to America, doing interviews, because he's lusting after Pam Anderson, where much like Between Two Ferns, the actual bits were great. There was absolutely no need to string a thread to make, to bring this to bring together a complete story. There was, the plot is incredibly weak. It's almost an afterthought. A waste of Galifianakis. To watch Will Ferrell sit there and every scene he's in just sitting there talking about how stupid the Galifianakis character was. What a waste. Really a good beef of the week, Ron. I got to commend you on that. That was literally a putrid movie.
Yes. Hopefully it goes off of Netflix soon. They could fill it with just dead air and it would be worth more.
Well, they're going to be filling it with a lot of episodes of Seinfeld pretty soon. They just laid out $500 million for the streaming rights to Seinfeld.
Bigger money went for Big Bang Theory. I forget. I think TBS, not TBS, but what streaming service just signed them? But they said it was somewhere in the ballpark of $800 million, possibly up to $1 billion when you factor in the TBS deal.
Ron, how is it that you and I are putting out such quality content every week, and we're not even getting $1 million from Netflix?
One word: Illuminati.
Fuck. I think it's got to be. I think it has to do with my ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
It's possible. I mean, they don't help. Let's put it that way. They certainly don't help. Well, obviously,
I didn't know. I mean,
it's
yes,
okay, Brian.
Yes, I was on the plane. Yes, I went to his private island. Yes, I took some photos with some underage girls, but I never saw anything. It's okay.
Listen, Brian, as many people have commented online this week, if it is okay for 16-year-olds to lecture us on climate change, then it is also fine for adult men to have sex with 16-year-olds. That is what I've learned this week.
Okay. There you
All
go.
right.
All right.
So biggest news this week, obviously, our locks of the week.
I feel like we should have had a bumper there.
I'm still working on that.
Okay, all right. Listen, once again,
I haven't quite got the rights from who was the one you liked there? Was it Carrie Underwood?
Yeah.
I haven't quite got the rights to use all of her music yet, so maybe next week we'll get that from her.
Okay,
maybe we'll just have you sing it.
Oh, speaking of which, I would like to point out once again, and this was announced today, NFL dropping the ball on the Super Bowl halftime show.
Really? You're not a fan of J-Lo and Shakira?
If they were going to be naked and making out with each other, I would be a fan of it. Do I need to see J-Lo doing her, Jenny from the Block? No. The halftime show there is literally, and it's been like this for several years now, where they are pulling pop stars and they are trying to drag a female viewer into the Super Bowl. The people that are watching the Super Bowl do not want to watch Shakira sing. They want somebody pounding a Budweiser. They want to see a backyard wrestling match. They do not want to see fucking J-Lo singing whatever song she sings. I have no idea.
And what I don't get is how you have a Super Bowl in Miami and you don't invite Mr. 305, Mr. Worldwide, Pitbull. I don't see how you don't have him there.
I think he'll be making an appearance during that set.
We'll see. We'll find out.
But in terms of my picks this week, once again, I am, continuing my undefeated streak. I picked 2 games. I liked the Giants against the Bucks. I thought 6 points was too many. Turns out Giants won the entire game. Then it was the Lions on the road at the Eagles getting 5.5 points. I said to myself, Eagles were lucky week 1. They're not going to be able to do it in week 2. Lions win the whole game 27-24. Week 2, Brian goes 2-0 for the season. He is 4-0.
And in looking at the official transcript of the episode from last week, I liked whoever was playing against the Cards. So that was Carolina. Cards were getting 2. Carolina ends up winning the game. And then Niners were getting 6.5 against the Steelers. I thought even without Ben Roethlisberger, a bit of a big number. Again, undefeated. So we're both undefeated on the season so far. So kudos. I hope people are making a lot of money off of these picks we're throwing out here. Do you mind if I do my picks first this week? Because I believe I let you go first last week.
Feel free to. I think you got some. I think that the people want to hear what Ron has to say about his picks. He's 4-0. Let's do it. What do you got?
I mean, and the game just kicked off. It's still 0-0, so I feel I can still make this pick. The Eagles are letting everybody down this season. The Packers, 4-point favorites, so I like the Pack at home, giving 4 points. I also like the under on that game if anyone's making a last-minute wager, although you probably hear this show after it's over. And then, even though it's a big, juicy line, I like it anyway. I like the Rams getting 9.5 over Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay last week, I think, showed they were a bit of a fraud in that loss against the Giants. So, once again, Rams giving 9.5. Those are my locks of the week. Brian, who you got?
Well, I'm going on the latest trend in the NFL, which is to say that the Miami Dolphins are utter shit, maybe the worst team that has ever gotten onto the gridiron. I'm taking the Chargers, laying 16 points at the Dolphins. And then I'm liking Minnesota this year. They're getting 2 points from the Bears at home. Bears have, I think, received some inflated expectations. I think it's time for them to take an L. So my teams are the Chargers and the Vikings.
All right. Since we're on the NFL right now, and you are there in the hotbed we know is New York, your thoughts on the benching of Eli Manning, what a lot of people are feeling are probably the end of his career, especially after Daniel Dimes stepped up and gave him a win in Tampa Bay.
I think this was a moment that had been decided the second that the Giants decided to draft a first-round quarterback. It was clear that they were setting the table for Eli becoming a second string. I did not think that it was going to happen as soon as it did. Giants looked terrible week 1. I think that it was an interesting decision to give the kid an opportunity in week 2 to start. I don't think there was many people that expected him to have such an impressive debut, winning the game 32-31, including that very key game-winning touchdown from inside the 10 when he ran it in untouched. I say Davy Jones is the quarterback of the future for the New York Giants. Eli, I think, as much as it hurts, he now has to take a step back and accept himself in the role of a mentor, much like you did for me when we started this podcast.
You know, what I found interesting about the whole situation was, I think was it 2 seasons ago when Ben McAdoo had benched Eli Manning, breaking his string of consecutive starts for the Giants, and the fans just lost their shit. Like, especially since, I forget who started that game, but they lost anyway.
Right.
So, but this time, it was definitely different. Like, Eli got benched, and people were like, yeah, it's probably time to bench Eli. Like, and obviously it was the right call. The other question that's been going around the internet this week, like to hear your opinion, is Eli Manning a first ballot Hall of Famer?
No, not okay. Hold on a second. All right, let's take a step back.
Okay.
I would say that Eli Manning is incredibly overrated. I think he has proven that he has the ability to lead a team to a Super Bowl. He's one of very few quarterbacks that has 2 Super Bowl rings. And at the same time, as somebody who lives in New York and has watched the Giants play fairly regularly over Eli's career, I have always found him to be an average, if not average plus quarterback. The kid throws a lot of interceptions. The kid throws a lot of missed passes. Do I think he's a good quarterback? Yes. Would I want him on my team if I had to win? No, I wouldn't. I would want somebody that I had more confidence in.
Okay. I mean, a lot of people do point out that as a career, he's got a 500 record, does not have a significant higher TD to interception ratio than a lot of average quarterbacks out there. But if you look at consistency, as far as quarterbacks in just the NFC East, I mean, he was the guy since 2004. Every other team in the division went through like 8 or 10 starting quarterbacks. The other question is, do you give him extra credit for helping prevent Tom Brady for having 8 Super Bowl wins at this point?
I just can't see myself doing that.
Okay. We'll find out. I mean, you can also look at Jim Plunkett, who's got 2 Super Bowl wins, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and is also not in the Hall of Fame. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think, what do they wait, 5 or 7 years where he can come up on the ballot?
Preferably 43. I believe it's quicker to become a Catholic saint than to get into the NFL Hall of Fame. I may be wrong on that. I'm not quite sure, but that's what I think.
And I think what hurts Eli also is he has literally 0 personality. And I think that has always been the issue with fans being able to connect to him. He's very low-key. You never really saw him get fired up. And I think, people want to see passion out of their quarterback. They want to see, like the Baker Mayfields of the world that gets a little feisty and gets in people's faces and headbutts other players. But that's not Eli's style. But, again, 2 Super Bowl wins, which is 2 more than you and I combined have.
See, I would take it a step further and say that I got the impression he lacks personality in general. I'm not even talking about passion or emotion, but, he would throw a pick 6 and just stand there with his arms on his hips being like, oh, shucks, I did it again. You never got a sense, especially in New York where there's such attitude. I just felt that, it was impossible to connect with. It almost felt like there was a potato throwing passes behind the center. Never a fan. And
of course, the Eli face always became a traditional meme each and every year. Because when he would stand there with his helmet off and just have a dumb look on his face, somehow the poor bastard someone took a picture of him just at the right moment when he looked completely out of it.
Oh, there was a time when I forgot what it was, but there was. Oh, I don't remember what it was. I think it was Hurricane Sandy when he was taking a picture with his phone of water in his building, and somehow that was just photoshopped and became a viral sensation of photoshopping Eli taking a picture on his phone in terrible moments in history.
Too funny. Well, we wish you best, Eli. Eli still had a better week than President Trump and, quite frankly, the entire United States of America. Obviously, the big news this week was the whistleblower complaint and the information that came out about President Trump's call back in April with the president of the Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Am I saying that first name right? Vladimir. It's Volodymyr. Volodymyr.
Well, I mean, it really depends on how you want to pronounce it. The way I would pronounce it is Chuck.
All right. So Chuck Zelensky.
Chuck Zelensky. Come on, Chucky baby, talk to me.
So the whistleblower, which apparently the New York Times decided to out today, sent this letter to the Inspector General. The DNI took the unprecedented steps of not passing it along to the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee, which is protocol, but did not happen, but it finally made it there, reporting an urgent concern about the president's conversations with a foreign entity, which we have come now to find was President Trump having a conversation with the president of the Ukraine, asking the president of the Ukraine to open up an investigation on Joe Biden's son, Hunter. What's your thoughts on this as we know so far, Brian?
It's interesting. And the reason to me is that I believe these types of arrangements have gone on forever. I believe that there has always been a quid pro quo in government interactions. I just don't think that we've ever had a president who so brazenly took the lead on such activity. I think in the past you probably had secondary and tertiary figures who would have these types of conversations. I cannot, the fact that you've got a sitting president who is talking to a leader of another country who is sitting there asking them to start an investigation in their country against a political rival and a potential presidential opponent in the upcoming election. The fact that Donald Trump, first off, the man just does not think he's capable of doing anything wrong. I think it's one of the lessons that we're taking away from this, is that under no circumstances is his thought process in any way incorrect or something inappropriate. Whereas if he had just some sense of smarts, he would have had somebody else reach out and make that call or make that request. And I think what I find so amazing is how fast the story has rolled out. You think about it, 72 hours ago, there was just hints of something going on. Now, not only has the transcript of the call mostly been released by the White House, but the actual allegation from the whistleblower to the Inspector General has also been released. Everybody's got their hands on it, and as a result, the Democrats in the House of Representatives have already started what they're considering their process towards officially impeaching President Donald J. Trump.
So the transcript, as you mentioned, probably most of the transcript. I don't think anyone believes it's the entire transcript. I mean, here is a man that doctored a weather map with a Sharpie to back up his words that he had said.
Right.
So no one feels that this is a complete transcript. According to the transcript, the call ran 30 minutes, but if you read through the transcript, you get through it pretty quickly. And even with translation, you get through it pretty quickly.
Ron, how do you know that you can get through that call pretty quickly?
Well, because your two favorite podcast hosts, Ron and Brian, have done a dramatic reading of the transcript of the phone call, and that will be available later today for our Patreon subscribers. So maybe we'll throw a little bone out there. Maybe we'll lower the entry level on the Patreon to let people get in and listen. We'll see. We're good people like that. But even with us screwing around, reading this transcript and embellishing on it on occasion, this still ran about 22 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think the difference, people are trying to compare this to the Mueller investigation and looking into Donald Trump, whether he colluded with the Russians. Two of the big changes seem to be, to your point, Donald Trump having the conversations directly.
Right.
Whereas in the issue with Russia, there was always middlemen that went in between. He was always smart enough to kind of stay out of direct contact with anybody from the Russians.
Right.
And also, during the time that these conversations were going on, Donald Trump was a private citizen. He was not an elected official.
Right.
In this instance, he's the president of the United States. So there's some different qualifications of what you can and can't do being a private citizen and being the president of the U.S.
And he is, and it's not even just that he's the president, but as the president, he controls, obviously with congressional approval, a large amount of foreign aid that the United States provides to Ukraine. So it's kind of like when your parents, when you're asking your parents for a raise in your allowance, and your parents say to you, well, we'd love to, they kind of imply it, where it's like, we would love to give you an increase on your allowance, but you're going to, maybe have to do more around the house. Here, but when this call took place, Donald Trump, just a few days beforehand, had informed his staff to hold back several hundreds of millions of dollars of foreign aid to the Ukraine. According to the transcript, it was not brought up during this call. Like you said, there's parts of this call that were not part of the official transcript that's been released. But the assumption here is that Donald Trump withheld this money in expectations that the Ukraine were going to take action against Joe Biden to get that money released.
So, obviously this is going to be hotly debated over the next few weeks. The Republicans already developed their talking points, which they nicely enough emailed out to all the Democrats the other day, and then sent one of those little recall notices like, hey, ignore the talking points we sent to you.
Is there anything more useless than the recall button? Has that ever worked in the history? They should just take it away.
The only time it works is if I'm in Gmail and I send something and you've got like 3 seconds to stop something from going. But once it's gone, like, people are reading that email, regardless of whether you recall it or not.
Right.
What is interesting to me is that, the Republicans are already, saying none of this is true, none of this is as bad as it seems, especially because the whistleblower did not have first-person witnessing of this conversation. But in the complaint, the whistleblower says, I had enough conversations with White House officials, many of whom told me the same story, that I believe their accounts of it. And the DNI and the Inspector General obviously felt there was enough there to take the complaint seriously. According to the whistleblower, the White House officials who gave him that information were deeply disturbed by what had transpired in the phone call. If I can quote from the complaint here, they told me that there was already a discussion ongoing with White House lawyers about how to treat the call because of the likelihood in the officials' retelling that they had witnessed the president abuse his office for personal gain. These are not neutral individuals.
Right.
These are people hired by the Trump administration to work in the White House that were concerned about this phone call and concerned that they had just witnessed the president trying to abuse his position for something to benefit himself.
Yeah, this is, and what I find most interesting is the response of deflection, which is to say that, Trump's original response when this story started to break was to say that what Joe Biden and his son did in Ukraine was a crime, and if it was properly investigated, Joe Biden would be in the electric chair. What I find interesting about that is that what you're dealing with is that if somebody's going to talk about what I did wrong, I'm not even going to address what I did. I'm just going to start talking about what the other person did wrong, which literally is one of the most offensive things that I can in my world, which is that, and obviously dropping an N-bomb to customers at a CVS is way more offensive than Donald Trump pointing at Joe Biden. So let me restate, my level of outrage. But it literally, it's the refusal to take personal responsibility for my actions. It's, if you accuse me of wrongdoing, I'm going to point to the man standing next to me and say, well, he also did wrong, or he's done wrong. Like, don't talk about me doing wrong. Talk about
I'm
this
not the
guy
bad
doing
guy. Look over here. Look at what the bad things going on this side of the aisle.
It literally, but it's, and it's one of the things that I've had the problem with in terms of the right's reaction to the attacks on Trump that have taken place. And nobody is saying that Joe Biden is a saint. Nobody is saying that Joe Biden is innocent. Nobody is saying that his son doing consultant work in Ukraine is not wrapped in corruption. It's, let's focus on what Donald Trump did here.
Right.
And that seems to be the biggest tactic that he takes, which is, let's talk about somebody else so we don't talk about me. When the reality of the situation is, no, we need to talk about you, because here is an example where you've got a sitting president who is who was just about 14 months away from a general election for his second term, and he is asking a foreign country to start investigating right now his most likely opponent in that general election. Regardless of what you think about the Ukraine or not, I mean, this clearly is wrongdoing. Regardless of what Joe Biden did in the Ukraine, even if his son broke the law, that's a separate issue, and let's address it. Let's deal with it. Let's investigate it. But let's also acknowledge what Donald Trump just did.
Right. We can do both. We can both investigate Hunter Biden, and we can investigate Donald Trump.
Right.
And Trump's big thing is, they fell into my trap. This is a perfect phone call. They're just embarrassing themselves. This phone call was so perfect. What we also learned from the whistleblower campaign, that this perfect phone call was attempted to be hidden by the White House officials.
Right.
White House officials told the whistleblower that they were directed by White House lawyers to remove the electronic transcript from the computer system in which such transcripts are typically stored for coordination, finalization, and distribution to cabinet-level officials. Again, reading from the complaint here. Instead, the transcript was loaded into a separate electronic system that is otherwise used to store and handle classified information of an especially sensitive nature. One White House official described this act as an abuse of this electronic system because the call did not contain anything remotely sensitive from a national security perspective. Which is true. If you read this transcript, what's in there is nothing of any national security significance, but there is definitely significance to Donald Trump trying to collude with a foreign power to influence an election in this country.
Yeah. So now here's really like my confusion. And it's not really confusion. It's just I'm pondering future occurrences. Is one of the hesitancies that the House Republican leadership has had over the past years or so, in terms of the push to impeach Donald Trump, is that the Senate is controlled by Republicans who have proven to be quite loyal to Donald Trump. So the hesitancy to impeach him is that it can backlash and actually suddenly make him look untouchable, because no matter what happens in the House, even if they do vote to impeach, the fact that there is no support for impeachment in the Senate pretty much rules out the fact that he will ever be kicked out of office. Obviously, what took place here was something that seemed to be so egregious that the House leadership decided that they needed to move forward with this. But where does this go? Clearly, you're going to have support in the House for impeachment. There's going to be hearings. There's going to be testimonials. But where does this go? How does this play out?
Well, as of the last count, there were 217 members of the House of Representatives, 216 Democrats. Justin Amash, who left the Republican Party to become an independent, he's 217. So that leaves them one vote shy of enough votes in the House to advance the impeachment into a trial in the Senate. So, the question then becomes, does Mitch McConnell try to block what is outlined in the Constitution and not hold an impeachment trial after one is voted on by the House? If he does, how does that impact the Republican Party and their supporters?
Right.
If he allows a trial to go ahead, which I agree, an impeachment trial, requires, I think, a 2/3 vote of the Senate to approve impeachment.
Right.
Now, people are saying that, Republican senators off the record, 30 of them said they would vote for impeachment should Trump, be proven to be guilty. But odds are they would not do that. If since the vote would need to be public, they wouldn't go against their party. But the question becomes, with the House of Representatives pushing forward an impeachment inquiry and possibly pushing an impeachment into the hands of the Senate, does it become a potential no-win situation for the Republicans? If you try and circumvent the process and not hold the impeachment hearings, do you alienate more of your Republican base, which believes in the Constitution, which believes in the rule of law, which believes in government, or do you move forward with the trial and risk a lot of information being made public, which if the public then believes that Donald Trump is guilty and should be impeached, and then you have all of these Republican senators not voting to impeach him, how does that impact the Republican Party and the Senate chances in 2020?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm fascinated by this because what we have seen during the 2.5 years of Donald Trump's presidency so far to date is that the political lines have really been very strong by party. You've got Republicans that are, however you want to look at it, in my opinion, they're slavishly devoted to backing Donald Trump as president, as if there's this great fear that if they don't back him, the repercussions will be terrible. At the same time, you've got the Democrats where over the course of the last 2 years, there has been this huge influx of progressive liberals into the party that have really been outspoken, have been vocal. Maybe some of them are not from America and should be sent back to their countries, according to some Americans. I'm not saying I agree with that. But it's the fact that the Democrats have been driven further to the left, have become more active, have become more outspoken, while the Republicans, and it almost, you get a sense that they are just trying to keep the party line. One of the things that has bothered me, and it's been on my mind, is how will history look back on Republicans of today? Because the stances they have taken have been shamelessly loyal to special interests. I find the refusal for any type of dialogue by the Republicans on gun control. The fact that you've got the religious right, which is a very strong and large segment of the voting populace. The religious right has clung to Donald Trump as the leader who they are backing. Meanwhile, this man has exhibited no signs of being religious, of following the scriptures of the Bible, Old Testament or New Testament. He's been caught paying off porn stars that he's had sex with while his wife was home pregnant. I mean, the man does not exhibit what one would consider to be what's the word I'm thinking of? Christian. He doesn't exhibit Christian values, but he hugs an American flag and talks about religious freedoms. And you've got the religious right literally eating at the trough to see who can suck off his little orange dick. It makes me wonder how time will look back on this.
Well, and one thing, to go back to, how the Republicans may vote, one thing that people are pointing at this past week is there was a vote in the Senate to try and overturn President Trump's executive order to divert funding to build the wall, which again requires 2/3 of a vote. And there were 11 Republican senators that broke with the party and voted to cancel that emergency declaration. So is it a crack in the dam, or is it just posturing from people in purple states that might be trying to shore up their base for 2020? Only time will tell.
Yep. I don't know that we'll know.
All right. Well, we'll keep following this. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more happening in impeachment over the next few weeks. But in the meantime, Brian, I understand you have a listener question.
We do have a listener question. Let me go pull it up. And this is, once again, and I'm a little disappointed, this one was directed towards you. James K. from Philadelphia reached out to us via our website, ronandbrianpodcast.com.
The new website, if we may throw it out there.
And I would like to highlight, this is an incredible website. This is what I consider the bomb of a website. If you take a look, go to our website right now, www.ronandbrianpodcast.com. It's impressive looking. And
but anyway, listener question.
Maybe that's what made James K. reach out to us. And what
maybe.
Here's James, and it's as I said to you, Ron, you discussed in earlier podcasts that you had supported a long list of expensive Kickstarter campaigns in which you were still waiting on the eventual delivery of these items, or in some cases had realized the obvious truth that you would never receive what you had paid for and accepted the reality that your hard-earned money had been stolen by internet hucksters who took advantage of your gullible nature. With that said, do you think it is a good idea now to refinance a 30-year variable interest rate home mortgage?
Interesting. I don't think the time is right just yet to refinance. Obviously, the Fed just cut rates. I've heard that they are anticipating cutting rates one more time before the end of the year, so I would hold off until the Fed changes the interest rate down. But I would never do a variable rate mortgage. Fixed rate is always your best bet.
Okay. I found it odd with this question that they would reference the Kickstarter campaigns and how you spent a lot of money on items that you did not receive.
It's a little painful. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I think it's upwards of at least $1,000 on items that I have not received.
It's got to hurt that you would show
right.
you would show such poor financial acumen there, and then they would come back and ask you about your thoughts on refinancing home mortgages. I found that very interesting.
Well, I've made some recent investments that I feel will help me in the long run, so I feel I'm on an upswing on the investment standpoint.
Well, what are these investments? Will you share?
Well, first, I will recommend it's an app, it's a website. It's called Fundrise, and so basically, it's a way for people to be able to invest in different real estate investment trusts out there. You can get in for as little as $500, and then basically, what they do is they invest your money in an entire portfolio. You let them know if you want to get dividends, if you want long-term growth is your main goal, or if you want a mix of both. And the app is actually very cool. You go on there. My money is actually in 60 active projects right now. So I can actually see whether they're debt deals, whether they're equity deals. I can see pictures of the construction as it's going on. So it's very interesting. I would highly recommend it.
Do you believe you know what you're doing with this investments?
Well, I know getting a return is better than losing money. And they have returned in their 4 years of existence. They've returned anywhere from 9 to 13% annually for their investors.
All right. Now, my question to you is, what is your discount code for those people that decide to go to fundrise.com and sign up?
It's a link, actually, but you don't really get anything except like investor advice. So it's not like Tavor, referral code 265020, where you get $10 off and I get a $10 credit when you make your first purchase of beer from Tavor, our friends.
Okay.
All right. What else do we got on the docket today? Celebrity obituaries.
We got a couple celebrity obituaries, and this one of these really hurts, and I'm going to let you try to figure out which one it is. As somebody who is a fan of history, former French President Jacques Chirac passed away at the age of 86. Chirac, who led the country through some very tough times. He was the first leader to actually acknowledge France's role in the Holocaust. He was defiantly opposed to the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. Was one of those guys, despite speaking French, he had a very strong personality. People will nicknamed him Le Bulldozer for his determination and ambition. Ate a lot of cheese, drank a lot of wine, rose to be the president, but passed away at the age of 86 this week.
All right. I think this next one probably hurt you more, though.
You think?
I do. Porn star Jessica James.
Jessica James. I mean, what can you say about the woman that starred in over 200 adult films, was once Hustler magazine's Honey of the Year? I mean, this one hurt. This one took me for a loop.
Passing away at the age of 40. Autopsy was performed after her body was released to her family. Cause of death not revealed yet, pending toxicology reports.
Yes. So we're going to assume that she was not on drugs of any type.
So let's not also forget she was August 2008 Penthouse Pet of the Month, co-founder of Spazoo, a pornographic film studio. She received the 2004 Delta Divanir from Milan winner for Best American Starlet, but probably peaked in 2018 when she was inducted into the AVN Hall of Fame.
All right, are you ready for a game? I've got a game for you. I'm going to read a pornographic movie, and I want you to tell me whether she was in it or not.
That's a tough one. Okay.
All right. Moms Teach Sex.
I'm saying, let's see, she was 40. You can start doing MILF porn at 25 now. So I'm saying, yes, she was in that.
You are absolutely correct. Hills Have Thighs.
Hills Have Thighs. I'm going to go no.
Wrong. She was in the movie Hills Have Thighs in 2016. Let's try another one here. Let's see. That Fucking Bitch.
Oh, yes, she was in that.
Yes, she was. How about Facial Overload 4?
I think she was in Facial Overload 3. I think this is a trick question.
This is no. She was in Facial Overload 4.
Really?
You're getting your facial overloads mixed up. Here's one. Big Tits at School.
I'm going to say, based on the trend so far, yes, she was in this.
All right. I'm going to move on. Now, here's a trick question.
All right.
I Have a Wife 17.
Is it up to 17 already?
Well, it was up to 17 in 2012. I can only imagine where they're at right now.
I'm going to say she was in that.
She was in that. You are correct. What about North Pole, number 74?
Wow, up to 74 for that franchise. Yes, I'm saying she's in that.
You are absolutely correct. She was. Last one here, Big Tits at Work, 8 from 2009. We're going way back on this one.
I'm going to say no, she wasn't in that one.
You are wrong. She was in that one. All right, Ron. I would say overall you did all right. I thought you would have done better.
All right. Well, what are you going to do? Listener Matt had asked us about the college game day Venmo story that was going on over this past week. Brian, I don't think you've been privy to this, have you?
I intentionally, when I saw the post on our Facebook page from Matt, I sat there and said, you know what? I believe Ron knows the background to the story, and I'm going to let him educate me in real time on the podcast. And that is why I'm going to let you run with this one.
All right, so Carson King is a young man who was at College Game Day on ESPN the other weekend. You ever watch the College Game Day?
No.
So they go live to different campuses around the country and, do pregame and all that. And the big thing at College Game Day is all the kids hold up signs, most of them very humorous and whatnot. So what Carson did is he held up a sign stating that he needed beer money for Busch Beer specifically. And he gave his Venmo ID for people to send him beer money. And what do you think happened, Brian?
People sent him beer money.
People sent him a shit ton of money.
How much did they send him?
Well, we'll get there. So in a few days, he had received $20,000 in his Venmo account.
I love it.
To which he then said, you know what? This is way too much. I didn't expect this was going to happen. So he decided that he was going to donate the money to the University of Iowa Steed Family Children's Hospital. And
that's amazing.
Busch Beer was on board. They're like, we're going to match every donation you get at your Venmo. We're going to give you free Busch Beer for a year. We're going to put your face on a can.
What a great story.
So, and then the money just kept going up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I love it. I love it. This is such a heartwarming story.
Now, actually, with matching funds and everything, he's actually up to having raised $1.7 million for the Children's Hospital.
That's amazing, Ron. You know what? I love the internet right now. I love everything about it. It's such a, you know what? There are great people out there in the world, and I think we need to celebrate them. Kids that get a chance on television and decide to show a little sense of humor and then turn it into something pure, something good. I think this is the thing that we need to highlight and embrace, and I'm glad that we did.
Unfortunately, Brian, I would think you would have been around the internet long enough to know that we can't have nice things.
What do you mean?
So
what took place?
The Des Moines Register wrote an article on this entire situation with Carson King, and the reporter managed to dig up some, let's say, racially insensitive content that Carson King had posted on his social media channels 8 years ago. Mind you, when he was 16 years old. So now, to his credit, Carson said, I was younger. He apologized. He said he's learned from his mistakes. He was trying to make poorly worded jokes back in the day, and he's trying to do better to be a young man that contributes to society. So, Busch Beer did kind of cut ties with him a little bit. They're not going to give him the free beer. They're not going to put his face on a can of beer, but they are going to continue to match the Venmo donations. So they're throwing in about $350,000. Other businesses and donors are throwing in money as well. What is interesting now is that the Des Moines Register, the newspaper that posted the article with the information about Carson King's social media, they've started to receive a lot of backlash, and now the reporter who wrote the article is now being investigated by the Des Moines Register because of social media posts that he made earlier in his life that weren't that favorable towards him.
Oh, well, the internet redeems itself. What a shit show!
So apparently,
what a shit show of trash.
King had said that his tweets quoted Tosh.0, which again, let Tosh do the jokes. Don't share those on your social media.
Right.
But apparently the Des Moines Register has lost thousands of followers on Facebook and Twitter. A petition has been started on change.org for the Register to issue an apology to King, which has more than 128,000 signatures so far. So, in fact, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds yesterday announced that there will be an official Carson King Day on Saturday, September 28th this week. So it's just,
So the governor's gotten involved in this?
So the governor is saying, Carson King, you're okay with me.
Well, of course. He made some... everybody's racist in that state, so...
But what I like is, he was obviously a dumb kid when he was 16 years old.
We all were.
Kind of a shitty thing for the Des Moines Register to point that out. And the collective force of the internet raised up to push back and say, what?
That's great.
Fuck you, Des Moines Register.
Yeah, fuck the Des Moines Register. Fuck them all.
All right. Well, we are just about ready to wrap up here. We are going to move over to the Patreon episode. We do have our dramatic reenactment of the Trump-Zelensky call that's going up on Patreon, but we will also be doing our post-episode episode, I guess you would call it. We're going to do a little Fuck, Marry, Kill that Brian has put together for me. Why don't we do one or two right now just to maybe tickle our listeners' asses with the feather and see if we get them over to the Patreon. So,
all right,
give me one.
I'm going to give you one.
All right.
1970s TV moms.
Ooh.
Fuck, Marry, Kill.
Okay.
Florence Henderson, Carol Brady of the Brady Bunch.
Right.
Shirley Jones, Shirley Partridge from the Partridge Family.
Okay.
And Bonnie Franklin, who played Anne Romano from One Day at a Time. Ron, you've got Florence Henderson, you've got Shirley Jones, you've got Bonnie Franklin.
Okay.
Who do you fuck, who do you marry, and who do you kill?
Boy, this is a tough one. I would probably kill Bonnie Franklin because she never did it. She never did much for me.
Okay.
So we'll put her down for a kill. And then it comes down to Shirley Jones, Florence Henderson. I mean, really, is there a better mom or housewife or partner than Carol Brady?
Apparently, she was banging Greg Brady in real life.
I mean, and she's a little bit of a freak, so I like that too. So we will marry Florence Henderson, and we'll just fuck Shirley Jones because I don't want to have to drive around in a bus with a bunch of kids.
Okay. See, I always found that Shirley Jones had sex appeal.
Well, I'm not saying she doesn't. I'm just saying from a marrying standpoint, I think Florence Henderson is the way to go.
I would agree. Also, because Florence Henderson has game enough to know to hire a cook in the kitchen.
Also wise.
There we go. Right. Well, that is only one. I have 9 more rounds.
All right. Well, we'll carry this over to the Patreon, which again, if you go to patreon.com/the Ron and Brian podcast, you can check us out. Also, if you go to ronandbrianpodcast.com, the brand new website, the link to our Patreon is at the top of the page. The link to all of our different areas you can listen to the website is there. The web store is there. The contact us is there. This website, dare I say it, it's the tits.
I love it.
All right. And you can connect to our social media feeds through there as well. You can go to Facebook. You can go to Twitter. You can vote on Racist of the Week. You can check out our Instagram, all of the content we have there. What else can they do there, Brian?
You can also click the link that goes to our online store. It says shop. Go to our online store where you can buy some of the best Ron and Brian swag. You can buy shot glasses, refrigerator magnets. You can buy stickers. You can buy hats. I mean, and that's just where we've started. There's so much more that is going to be rolled out in the coming weeks and months. Get on the train now before we start receiving that Netflix money, and you will no longer have this kind of access to us.
All right, well, let's roll on out of here and roll into Patreon land. Brian, you got anything else for the freebies out there?
I fucking love you.
Love you, my friend. We'll be back for your Patreon subscribers in just a minute.